There's an uncomfortable truth that almost no one dares to admit. So many people seem to be searching for God, but in reality, they're just running from the fear of disappointing Him. The tragedy is that this spiritual deception isn't noticeable from the outside. You might see someone praying, reading the Bible, serving in the church, and think they're close to the Lord, while inside they feel empty, guilty, and exhausted. Because seeking God is not the same as trying to earn His approval. And if you stay with this video, I tell you in all sincerity, you might discover the spiritual reason why you've spent years feeling like you're doing everything right, yet you remain distant from Him. This message has the power to break chains you never knew were binding you. So stay until the end. There I will reveal to you a truth that is not theoretical, but profoundly transformative. A truth that can change the way you relate to God forever. Perhaps you too have felt that weight on your chest when you fail, that voice that tells you you're not enough, that you need to try harder, prove yourself more, correct yourself more, as if God's love were an exam you must pass. It's hard to admit, but many don't pray out of love. They pray out of fear. They don't read the Bible to know His heart, but to soothe their conscience. They don't go to church out of spiritual hunger, but out of fear of losing points with God. And they don't realize that this kind of faith doesn't bring life. It brings weariness. It doesn't bring freedom. It brings anxiety. Because when faith becomes a mechanism to avoid rejection, it ceases to be a relationship and becomes servitude. And in that spiritual bondage, the soul begins to slowly fade like a candle without oxygen, until one day you silently ask yourself if God truly knows you or merely tolerates you. That question, so painful and so real, is the exact point where the true search begins. The difference between seeking God and trying to please Him may seem small, but spiritually it changes everything. Seeking God stems from hunger, from genuine desire, from that thirst the psalmist confessed when he said, "My soul thirsts for the living God." It is a movement of the heart that cannot be explained, only felt. But trying to please God through performance stems from fear, from the burden of believing you are never enough, from that anxiety that compels you to prove your worth to God. And although outwardly both paths may appear similar, inwardly they produce completely opposite results. One brings rest, the other exhaustion. One ignites your spirit, the other slowly drains you. Perhaps you know that weariness better than you admit, that exhaustion from trying to pray properly, from reading enough, from serving just enough, as if God were measuring your every move with an invisible ruler. The most painful thing is that the more you try to please Him through your actions, the less loved you feel. Because there will always be a prayer you failed to pray, a verse you didn't understand, a decision you made wrong, and then faith ceases to be a refuge and becomes a court where you are both judge and defendant. The most devastating thing is when you start to think that God is tired of you, when in reality it is you who is tired of trying to deserve what has already been given to you by grace. And in that silent confusion, many lose their own hearts without even realizing it. When faith becomes a constant attempt to prove something, it transforms into a prison, disguised as devotion. You begin to live as if God were a stern teacher scrutinizing your flaws, instead of a father who looks upon you with compassion. And this internal distortion changes everything. Your prayer is no longer conversation, it's a report. Your worship is no longer surrender, it's an effort. Your service is no longer gratitude, it's guilt in disguise. Without realizing it, you begin to relate to God from a place of fear, as if His love had a limit and you could cross it at any moment. The tragedy is that you do it unintentionally, simply because someone taught you that God is more interested in your perfection than in your heart. But the Bible never depicted a God seeking flawless people. It depicted a God calling to broken, weak, needy men, aware of their fragility. "My child, give me your heart, not your results." And yet we have become accustomed to offering works instead of offering our souls. We worry more about failing in discipline than failing in sincerity. We are more distressed by not fulfilling a spiritual routine than by not having a real relationship with Him. And so, little by little, we lose the sense of faith. Because faith without intimacy becomes an empty echo that sounds loud on the outside but dies on the inside. The most unsettling thing is that when your heart begins to fade, you can continue doing all the spiritual things, while your soul cries out for something you no longer remember how it feels. There comes a moment in your spiritual life when you stop and realize you've spent years trying to impress a God who never asked that of you. You find yourself praying without desire, worshipping without depth, serving without joy. Not because you don't love Him, but because at some point you forgot how to seek God from the heart and began to do so out of obligation. That transition is so subtle that no one notices it when it happens. One day, they pray out of love. The next, they pray out of fear of feeling distant. One day they read the Word to know Him. The next, they read it to avoid feeling guilty. Routine replaces relationship, and you end up living with the feeling that something has broken inside you, even though you don't know exactly what. The truth is that when you try to please God through performance, faith becomes a burden. You wake up feeling like you always have to catch up spiritually, that you're always in debt, that you never reach the level you think God expects. It's like running on a treadmill that never stops. You move forward, you push yourself, you sweat, but you never get anywhere. That kind of spirituality robs you of joy and leaves you with guilt, takes away your freedom and leaves you exhausted, talks about obedience but hides love from you. And then one day you ask yourself why, if you do so many things for God, you still feel so far from Him. That uncomfortable question is a sign that your soul is yearning for something deeper than your discipline, something truer than your performance, something more alive than your spiritual routine. At that point of spiritual exhaustion, many believe the solution is to do more, pray more, read more, serve more, try to reach a level of holiness that in their minds will finally make God look upon them favorably. But that path doesn't heal. It only deepens the wound, because no matter how many times you repeat an action, you can never fill a void born from a disconnection of the heart. It's like trying to quench your thirst with sand. The more you try, the more you realize something is wrong, and yet you continue, because you're afraid to stop. You're afraid that if you stop striving, God will turn away. You're afraid that if you don't fulfill everything, you'll end up proving yourself unworthy of Him. You don't realize that this fear is precisely what's pushing you away from His presence. Jesus never called the self-sufficient, the perfectly disciplined, or those who considered themselves spiritually admirable. He said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened." That statement reveals that God doesn't seek performance. He seeks sincerity. He doesn't ask you to arrive strong. He asks you to arrive authentic. But how often do you approach Him pretending to be okay, repeating empty prayers, performing rituals that have lost their meaning? It's painful to admit, but necessary. Many times we speak to God from a role we're playing, not from the person we truly are. And the saddest part is that this spiritual performance convinces you that God hears your words, when in reality He has always been waiting to hear your heart. And that heart sometimes no longer knows how to speak. When the heart becomes accustomed to hiding behind spiritual effort, it begins to lose sensitivity. You continue to pray, but you no longer feel you are speaking with the Father, but with an authority you must keep satisfied. You continue to read the Bible, but not as a living letter, but as a document you must fulfill. You continue to serve, but not with joy, but with the silent obligation not to fail. And little by little, without anyone noticing. Your soul becomes adept at feigning closeness, while inwardly it withers. That is the most dangerous trap, when your exterior appears strong, but your interior is broken, when your spiritual life seems orderly, but your spirit no longer rests, when you do everything right, but you do it lifelessly. This is where the question that could transform everything arises. Are you truly seeking God, or are you merely seeking His acceptance? Because the difference isn't theological, it's existential. Those who seek God run to Him even on their worst days. Those who try to please Him run to Him only when they feel presentable. Those who seek Him confess their weakness. Those who try to please Him hide it. Those who seek Him find rest. Those who try to please Him never cease feeling indebted. And the most profound thing is that God has long since seen your true state. He knows where you are broken, where you are weary, where you are confused, and yet He still says to you, "My child, give me your heart, not your mask, not your perfect discipline, not your edited spiritual version, your heart." Because it is precisely in that place, in the most honest part of you, that the faith that truly transforms begins. Seeking God doesn't mean perfection, it means surrender. It means returning to Him without filters, without embellished explanations, without trying to hide what He already knows. And yet, for many, this is the hardest thing, showing God what they themselves reject in themselves. We prefer to offer Him our best selves, our most spiritual phrases, our noblest intentions, forgetting that He didn't ask for any of that. He asked for our hearts, even when they are broken, even when they are weary, even when they are confused. But when you try to please Him through performance, you are afraid to show your open wounds, because you believe He expects you to arrive fixed first. And so you end up falling into a cycle where you pretend to be okay so as not to disappoint Him, even though deep down you are slowly fading away. What's striking is that God isn't moved by your strength, but by your truth. And the truth, sometimes, is that you don't know how to pray, that you don't know what to say, that you don't feel like it, that you're cold, that you're frustrated, that you're tired. That truth, which shames you so much, is precisely where grace becomes real. Because grace doesn't act on the mask, it acts on the wound. It doesn't manifest itself in your performance, but in your authenticity. That's why, when you try to win God over through good works, you distance yourself from grace without realizing it. But when you approach Him with a naked heart, grace envelops you in a way that no discipline can achieve. And it is there, in that profound vulnerability, that faith ceases to be a duty and begins to be a living encounter. Trying to please God through human effort always ends up creating a distorted image of who He is. Without realizing it, you begin to imagine a father who evaluates your performance, who looks at you with detachment when you fail, who is saddened when you don't meet His own expectations. But that is not the God of the Bible. It is the God created because of your own shortcomings. Scripture reveals a father who runs to the returning child, not to the one who impresses. A father who bends down to the weak, not to the proud. A God who restores hearts, not one who collects merits. That is why Jesus did not come to seek flawless people. He came to seek the brokenhearted. And when you understand this, you realize that the problem was never that you failed, but that you believed your failure disqualified you from God's love. Trying to please Him through performance is like trying to hug someone while holding up a shield. No matter how hard you try, the distance will always be there. But when you lower that shield, when you stop presenting yourself as perfect, something unlocks inside you. For the first time, you no longer feel you are being evaluated, but loved. You no longer feel you must impress, but rest. And it is in that rest that the transformation occurs that works could never produce. Because pleasing God doesn't come from effort, it comes from faith. And faith isn't a muscle that flexes, it's a trust that surrenders. That surrender, so contrary to our human instinct, is the exact point where your heart begins to breathe again. When you understand that God didn't call you to impress him, but to know him, something profound begins to change within you. Prayer is no longer an obligation you fulfill, but a place you return to. The Bible ceases to be a spiritual task and becomes a mirror where you discover who you are and who he is. God's presence stops feeling like a test and begins to feel like a refuge. Because when you seek God from the heart, not from performance, you no longer run to him to give an account, but to rest. And that rest isn't passivity. It's the peace of knowing you don't need to earn what you've already received by grace. It's the freedom to stop proving yourself and start trusting. Ephesians 2:8-9 declares that we are saved by grace and not by works, so that no one may boast. This means that God doesn't draw near to you because of your merits, but because of his love. He doesn't sustain you because of your discipline, but because of his faithfulness. He doesn't bless you because you did everything right, but because you are his child. But when you live trying to please him with your performance, you turn grace into a salary and faith into a competition. You believe that God loves the strong, the constant, those who never fail. And that lie robs you of the most precious thing, confidence. Because no one who lives trying not to fail can feel free. No one who lives evaluating their spiritual performance can feel loved. And just when you think God is distant because of your mistakes, he is actually closer than ever, waiting for you to dare to let go of the fear that has accompanied you for years. The true search for God begins when you stop relating to him as an employer and start seeing him as a father. An employer evaluates, grades, demands results. A father embraces, guides, lovingly corrects, and stays even when you stumble. And although we know this in theory, in practice many continue to live as if God keeps a meticulous record of their failures. That thought robs you of intimacy. It makes you believe you must enter his presence carefully, with a pre-rehearsed script, with impeccable conduct. But God does not want children who approach with fear. He wants children who approach with confidence, even when they tremble, even when they do not understand, even when they do not have the strength to pretend. Hebrews 11:6 says that without faith it is impossible to please God. It doesn't say without discipline, or without perfection, or without blameless works. It says without faith, and faith in its purest form is trust. Trust when you have no feelings. Trust when you've failed. Trust when shame tells you to walk away. Trust when condemnation whispers that God is tired of you. Trust when your heart is dry, cold, or weary. Trust when everything about you says you're not worthy. That trust is what pleases God, because it's the kind of faith that springs from an honest heart, not a perfect one. And it's right there, in that silent act of trusting even when you don't feel strong, that God's presence begins to rebuild what performance had worn down. When you approach God with trust, not effort, something deep within you begins to transform. You no longer feel you must hide your struggles because you understand that he doesn't reveal them to shame you, but to heal you. You no longer fear your fragility because you discover that grace flows most freely in the places where you can no longer stand. And it is there that you understand what Jesus meant when he called the weary and burdened. He wasn't looking for flawless people, but for people willing to stop pretending. He was calling those who could no longer bear their own yoke, those who were tired of trying to deserve what he was always willing to give freely. When you stop acting and begin to be honest with God, what was once a burden becomes rest. Your prayer becomes simpler, more raw, more genuine, and therefore more powerful. Your relationship with him stops being about your achievements and starts being about your heart. You discover that God doesn't love you less on your weak days, nor more on your strong days. His love doesn't rise or fall according to your performance. It is constant, firm, unwavering. And when you finally accept that, a freedom appears that doesn't come from doing more, but from letting go. It's the freedom of knowing that you don't need to prove anything, demonstrate anything, or impress anyone, because the God who created you has already seen the worst of you and still chose to stay. And in that silent discovery, your soul begins to breathe in a way it may have fee. And when your soul breathes again, you realize that what God wanted from the beginning wasn't your performance, but your closeness. He didn't want your perfection, he wanted your presence. He wasn't looking for your flawless works, he was looking for your sincere heart. And that is the greatest gift you can give him, to present yourself as you are, without embellishment, without defenses, without fear of being seen. Because God's love doesn't flourish where you pretend. It flourishes where you surrender, and in that space of surrender, of vulnerability and truth, you discover that the search for God never depended on how strong you were, but on how willing you were to let him find you. So, if you've been trying to please him using your own strength, if you've felt tired, guilty, or distant, listen to this. God isn't asking for more effort, he's asking for more sincerity. He doesn't want a corrected version of you. He wants the real you. He wants your heart, even when it beats with doubt, even when it's weighed down by guilt, even when it trembles with fear. Because it is there, precisely there, that his grace accomplishes what your works could never do. And the spiritual truth I promised you at the beginning is this: when you stop trying to earn God and begin to seek him from the heart, what you find is not demands. It is rest. It is not judgment. It is embrace. It is not distance. It is presence. And that encounter, so simple and so sacred, has the power to forever change the way you walk, the way you pray, the way you live, and the way you love the God who first loved you.